gonna leap right in with a kind of chronological order, going least recent to most recent of what I've been reading. Least recent, Nimona. I read this webcomic when it was still like in the process of being released, and now it's this beautiful glossy graphic novel, and it's so pretty and it's so good. So if you don't know what Nimona is this character here. She kind of busts into Blackheart's life, this dude here. He's the villain, and she kind of knocks down his door and says, "Hi, I'm your new sidekick. Let's go fuck shit up." Blackheart's nemesis is this guy, Ambrosius Goldenloin, and they are like, they're super gay, they're very much in love, but you know, not saying anything about it. And Nimona is also a shapeshifter, and it's like, it starts off really light-hearted and fun, and then sort of before you know it, it becomes really hard-hitting and extremely emotionally powerful, and by the end you're kind of a wreck. But it's really good and really easy to get through. I read it in a day. The artwork is absolutely beautiful, and I would also recommend that you follow Noelle Stevenson, the author and artist, on Twitter, because there's just a lot of excellence there and good opinions on comics and representation and all sorts of stuff. It's wonderful. Up next is Red Seas Under Red Skies by Scott Lynch, which is the sequel to The Lies of Locke Lamora. This one I read a few months ago, and it was so good I immediately went out and bought the next one, but then didn't read it for ages because I was still in a state of like high-pitched excitement and my brain sort of interpreted that as just read a few books in the interim and calm down before you tackle the next one. It's set in a fantasy world that the first one is set in a city called Camor, which is a lot like Venice. It's an island canal city. If you like Terry Pratchett, the Discworld series, I would definitely recommend this. It's very, very funny. And it's got a really, really great style. The first one especially, of sort of going back and forth between present day and when Locke was a kid, and like sort of what's made him who he is as you meet him. Red Seas Under Red Skies took me a while to get into because after this, Locke leaves Camor and goes to a completely different city, and the setting kind of threw me a little bit. He's also, for reasons I won't get into, very, very depressed at the end of the first book and at the beginning of the second. I would definitely recommend reading these. They're a wonderful fantasy series, and I haven't read like pure fantasy for a long time, like fantasy that isn't partially set in our world, so that was really, really fun. And the next book is also out, so I need to go and get that and read it. The next two are by the same author, Graham Robb. So Parisians and The Discovery of France. Parisians I read first, and it's the history of Paris, essentially, from during, after the revolution, so in the late 1700s. For me, it had a lot of really, really interesting bits. There was a chapter about the Notre Dame equation, which had a lot about alchemy and science and nuclear physics, which I, found easy enough to follow and was really, really interesting to me. For me, it didn't have enough clarity when it came to dates, which meant that I still don't feel like I really have a proper grasp of the history of Paris, but it was really well done, and the ending chapters gave me goosebumps. The chapter that was mostly concerned with very recent French Parisian history, which was like the 2005 riots, that chapter gave me goosebumps. It was done really, really well. The Discovery of France, on the other hand, I would recommend to anyone whether you're interested in the history of France or not, because just comparing it to the development of the UK was wild. I had no idea about any of this stuff, and it was really, really interesting. The only complaint I would have about this is that it focused too much on life outside Paris in terms of just rural France, and not on any of the other cities like Marseille or Bordeaux or anything like that. And there was this really, really great passage. Hippolyte Taine's image of the common people in his Origins of Contemporary France, it just struck me as still being relevant to a lot of places in the world today. The people are like a man walking through a pond with water up to his chin. At the slightest dip in the ground, at the merest ripple, he loses his footing, sinks and suffocates. Old-fashioned charity and newfangled humanity try to help him out, but the water is too high. Until the level falls and the pond finds an outlet, the wretched man can only snatch an occasional gulp of air, and at every instant he runs the risk of drowning. There were some great photos in here as well. This one's probably my favourite. These are of these shepherds who, got around on stilts, and they could move as fast as a trotting horse. But it kind of blew my mind just how, at least the way that Rob made it sound, that a lot of France hadn't really been mapped or discovered as late as, like, the 1930s, practically. It was really, really interesting. The next book I read was The Rookie Yearbook 3. My sister's birthday was on July 15th, and she asked me to buy this for her, and she brought it on holiday with her. And I read it while I was there, because it's a very, very beautiful book. Very, aesthetically pleasing, and it had like a lot of articles that looked like they would be interesting to me. I didn't expect to read all of them because some of them didn't interest me, but I read a lot more than I expected I would. Rookie is the sort of thing that's aimed at teenage girls, but I never read it when I was a teenager. Jess was the one who got into it and she introduced it to Midget. I've read a couple of articles online, mostly interviews. It's really good and I'm really glad that Midget's reading it because it's very, very diverse. It makes a point of being diverse and interesting and, you know, promoting open-mindedness and acceptance. I liked it a lot. These next two books aren't mine either, they're Jess's. So I read The Virgin Suicides and The Waves. Virgin Suicides, Jess and Midget both really love, and they both really love the film as well, which I have seen once and liked, I think, at the time, but it was so long ago I can't really remember much. So I expected to like the book, but I didn't really that much. Like, there were parts of it I really liked. I don't know, I just kind of felt a little bit, I couldn't quite give myself over to it, almost. The book is narrated by a bunch of boys, or by one boy and his guy friends, who obsess over the family of girls who kill themselves, the Lisbon girls. The way that they talk about it right from the beginning in a very like flippant way almost, I don't know, it just kind of skeeved me out a little bit. The way that they talked about the girls' suicides and just the girls in general, and I know that like that's kind of the point of the book, to see it from their point of view and to completely not understand what's going on in the girls' heads. They're, you know, completely different creatures. You have no idea what their motivations are, what they're feeling, what they're thinking. You have only like a few inklings here and there as to their mental states. But it's guesswork. It's completely guesswork, which is frustrating because I think the story would be much more interesting from their point of view. But, you know, again, that's kind of the point, that you're not seeing it from their point of view, that you're seeing it from an outside perspective. I think it was just the tone that just kind of creeped me out, because these boys obsess over them and worship them, and the book ends and they're in their middle-aged and they have wives and they have kids and they're all up in this treehouse that they used to go in when they were kids, and they have all of this collection of crap that they've hoarded over the years. You know, jewellery, clothes, hair I think was one of the things that they took. A diary from the first girl who killed herself. It's a really bizarre and very creepy collection, and they are still there in their grown-up world, still obsessing over this, and it's weird. It's very weird. And that just skeeved me out, and that meant I couldn't, you know, quite get into it, which is a real shame. But I at least know that it's not an author thing, because I've read one of Jeffrey Eugenides' other books, Middlesex, which I absolutely loved. Next book I read, which I finished yesterday, was The Waves by Virginia Woolf, and I'm a crappy English student and I've never read any Woolf before this. I didn't get it for a while, like the style is very different from anything I'd ever read before, which is really good. Like once I figured out what the style was, I got into it a lot easier. I had no idea what the hell was going on when it started. The whole story is interspersed with these bits in italics, which describe the sun rising, coming to noon and setting over the course of a day as you follow the lives of these 6 people. Children when it starts, and the last one is an old man at the end. I rushed through the last chapter. It felt like Bernard, the guy whose passage was the last one, was just telling me everything that had already happened, which is essentially what he's doing, I think, but I feel like it's one of those books that needs to be studied or read about to really appreciate, which is a shame. The lack of coherent story is what annoyed me the most, I think. And Percival, he's not a point of view character, but he's kind of the thing that the vague story kind of centres around. He is a childhood friend of theirs, a school friend of theirs, who then later goes to India and dies. And, you know, some of them are more affected by this than others, but I just didn't get what was so great about Percival. None of them say a bad word about him, but they never really say what's so good. He obviously has natural charisma, but there's more to that than a person. It was just too vague for me to really feel any sense of grief at all. I bookmarked a lot of passages though, so if I ever get my own copy I'll know which bits to underline, because there were some really beautiful bits, mostly in the first half, admittedly, like the more interesting bit for me. I guess I didn't really enjoy it that much, but it has made me want to read more of her work, which is probably a success. I just finished reading this today. It is Pills, Thrills and Methadone Spills, The Adventures of a Community Pharmacist by the Twitter user Mr. Dispenser. And Aidan got this as a leaving present, along with a bunch of other stuff, when he left his job at the pharmacy. And pharmacy is like one of those closed world careers, at least it seems that way to me, and I think you probably agree. Where like, you know, everyone who's in it knows what's going on and everyone who's on the outside has no idea, really. I remember asking him, why does it take so long for my prescription to get passed through? It's just a box of pills. What is taking so long? And he got really pissed off at that, because apparently there's loads of things that have to be done before you can give someone their pills. But this was very, very funny. There are parts of it that just went over my head because I don't understand pharmacy lingo, but Aiden read it and loved it, so. Let's do an outfit of the day. Outfit of the day. Union Jack tights because they're comfortable. Long blue skirt with pockets, the best ever. Shirt with black palm trees, which I quite like. Got that from a charity shop. And I'm actually wearing makeup today for a change, like, you know, more than my usual blue mascara. What is this lipstick? Rimmel. Tantrum.